Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us here at Hungry Mother State Park. My name is Kashan, and I will be showing you how to make your own natural tie-dyes at home. Yes, before dye was put into bottles that you can get anywhere, you actually were able to go outside and get colors for your clothes. And when I say outside, I mean you had to collect tree branches or tree bark or tree roots or flowers, vegetables, anything you can find outside, almost anything you can make, you can use for dyes and stains. People all over the world throughout the years have been using natural materials that they found outside for stains. I will be telling you about a few of those different methods and plant materials that were used to stain clothes throughout the world in history. After learning about how far tie-dye goes throughout the world, you will be able to see how the art of tie-dye is the best expression of unity through diversity. Now, to begin, I'll show you just a few of the materials you'll be needing. First, you want to make sure wherever you're working, this is still tie-dye, so we don't want anything to stain, so make sure you have something for your table. You'll be needing a pot for this particular method that we're using, and you're going to be needing your materials that you want to use, your plant materials that you want to use for your dyes. I'm going to be using red cabbage, that is a very popular natural dye, and also black beans. And also I have this alum powder, which I will be explaining later, why that's important for this natural tie-dye process. And I have lemon juice. I will also be explaining that later, along with baking soda. And then also you need some containers to store your shirts in as you're waiting for them to dry or soak up the colors. And this is not as natural as we can go. I would be doing what the Native Americans did in history. They would use tree limbs and bark and fresh fruit and vegetables that they would grow themselves to get their colors. Their method of getting the colors would just be pounding the material into the fabric that they chose. They would also soak it or boil it, which is actually the method we're going to use, or they would just start by shredding the material and let that soak in the water. There are a lot of methods each group would have chosen to get their colors. Hungry Mother State Park was actually founded in an area with a lot of Native American history. In this area, the trees or plant life they would have used include dogwood to get purple or blue, onions to get they would get the skins off the onions and separate them and boil those to get a deep orange color. Raspberries for red, and sassafras was another tree that was used for potential green, purple, and yellow. So sadly, I am not that skilled to extract colors like that. So I decided to just show you all some household items that are readily available to you all so that we can all try this experiment together. And you don't have to just stick with the ones I show. Feel free to have fun with anything that's in your spice cabinet. Any spices, not any, but there are a few spices in there that have their own color that I would be pretty curious as to what they would turn into. I digress. Anyway, let's begin by talking about how to fold our shirts.
Here is one form of tie-dye for you to try. This is called the Sheetbori method. You start from one end and fold forward and then fold on the back. You fold forward and then fold to the back. Forward, back, until you get to the end of the shirt. And once you get to the end, you turn it and then you want to start folding it into triangles from the bottom. Fold it forward, fold it back, and fold it forward and fold it back. In the Sheetbori method, the only color that was used was indigo, which came from a Japanese indigo plant tree. And then once you get to the end, you just tie it off with a rubber band on each end, and there you have it.
Now, another method of natural tie-dye tying method is one that I found that is popular in India. It's called banhani, and here's an example for you. Now, I was a little nervous to attempt such a feat because it's very detailed work, What they're doing is they're pinching a section of fabric, a small section, really small, and taking fine string and wrapping that string around it to act as its rubber band, like how we use how you would typically see a tie dye done is with rubber bands, but they use string and wrap it super tight, and they have these lines of tight those ties, and that creates that beautiful spiral pattern that you see down there. Now, once you have chosen the type of fold you want to use for your shirts, a very important step in the natural dyeing process is preparing your fabric for the color. In this method of tie-dye, we're going to be boiling our materials, so that's going to produce a very watery solution. And we don't want want our colors to just wash out of our fabrics. So for your fabric, once you have it in that fold, you have to set it in a solution of vinegar and water, is what we're going to be using today. If you're using berries or fruits, you need a solution of salt and water. And you want to make sure this is done an hour before you start your colors. This is a very important step. This will help the color really fix to the fabric. That's why it's called our fixative. Now to the kitchen.
All right, so we have our red cabbage ready. So we're gonna shred that into tiny pieces. Well, as small as we can get. We don't need super small pieces. You can use a knife, but you can also just use your hands, which is more fun. And also you will see that I do have a pot of water going. You only need your pot to be about halfway full of just water. Um, and then we're just gonna wait for that to come to a boil. And boom, we have our boiling water. Now we're just going to go ahead and toss in our red cabbage. And what you don't see in this video, almost forgot, I added our alum powder that I mentioned earlier. The alum powder is another fixative that's going to help our dye adhere to our fabric. So you only need about 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of alum powder. And that's all you should need. And now I'm just going to let this pot of red cabbage sit for at least an hour, maybe 2 hours. It depends on how dark you want your color. If you want your color really dark, I recommend 2 hours. 1 hour would give you a nice lighter color. Now that it's been 2 hours, let's go ahead and check on our red cabbage dye. With this, you're going to want a strainer. And we'll see what that looks like. Got a nice deep purple. Now I'm going to show you all a nice fun little trick you can do. Instead, if you don't want purple, you can actually get blue by adding baking soda. Like a chemical reaction. Now this happens because red cabbage is called an additive dye. So when you change the pH level by adding baking soda, you get blue. When you raise the pH, you get blue. When you lower the pH, you can actually get red. But today we're going to go for blue.
And here are what your shirts might look like after the dyeing process. Now my shirts turned out a bit more pastel than what I'd like. This is your typical red cabbage purple color, and this is the red cabbage with baking soda color. If I let them soak for a little bit longer than an hour, they probably would have gotten darker. I would suggest letting it soak for quite a while before you let them out. And the shirt I'm wearing is actually that Sheetbori fold that I told you about earlier. I actually used black beans for this one, and it turned a little bit darker. And I thought it was going to be black. It's kind of black, gray, but it also has on the edges, it's purple. So another purple-ish type option. And this one in the center, I used turmeric powder. And what I did was I just took little sections and just rubber band these small parts to get the little circles. Turmeric powder is a great natural dye. I definitely recommend trying that if you like turmeric. And with that, that is how you make natural tie-dye. Around the 1960s and 1970s is what we know to be the decade of tie-dye. This is where we begin to see our colorful rainbow rays in our music festivals and any other type of festival you can think of, or just in our backyards. Tie-dye became a symbol of expression and compassion and love. It also expressed acceptance in a world that was completely divided. If you have ever tie-dyed before, I'm sure you noticed how we all like different colors. Some of us want a lot more color. Some of us want to use only one color. And some of us are way better at making knots than others. This art form shows us that we can still enjoy something even though we have different ways of working with it. As you are stuck at home, I hope I was able to inspire you to create and share your creation with others. Thank you all so much for joining me today. If you like this program, make sure you leave a like on this page and or comment at the bottom and let us know how much you liked it. And I hope you have fun.